if you feel so.
Sure.
Can I request if we can not share the slides, maybe just for a minute and have everyone share their videos, and I'll be happy to take a screenshot of how we are just coming together as a team.
You want to do
Just
it now?
for the first minute, if that's okay.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
we can
Pooja.
do it.
Sure.
So you'll have to remove the screen,
Babu,
the
you are-
Babu.
presentation.
Unshare the
Yeah.
slide.
Morning, Sugata. Pranjal, we were so
morning.
looking forward to hosting everybody in Microsoft Office, maybe in Bangalore, huh? And then
Yes.
we'll really talk about metaverse in Bangalore.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hi,
very
Nitin.
nice.
Hi, Anilji. Good morning.
Hi.
Nitin, we are taking
Hi,
a
Anil.
photograph. So
Hi,
you
good
can
morning.
switch on the video. We'll take a photo.
Yes, of course. Hi, Anil. Good morning, Erica.
Hi, hi. Nitin, hello.
Hi, Erica. I was thinking that this meeting is so close to my office. It'll be lovely to walk across to Microsoft.
Hey, we are in office. You know, the context of the meeting, it's going to be truly hybrid.
Yeah, that's right.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Rajesh, this side from Bangalore office.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Rajesh.
Pooja, you've
Hi,
taken the
Rajesh.
picture. Shall we kick off?
Pooja, you should
We have a
give
good
us a
one.
3, 2, 1 so that we
Yes.
all keep our best face up.
Yes. Okay, so I'm now taking the image from my mobile phone, and yeah, 3, 2, 1, and if everyone can say hi
Cheers. Hi.
Hello.
digitally.
Hi.
All right. Thank you so much. We can get
Thank
started.
you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Pooja. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming for this virtual roundtable discussion on enabling productivity in the hybrid world. A few housekeeping tips. Please switch on your camera. We would love to see you and interact with you. Please use the chat in case you'd like to have a conversation, but we recommend and we invite you to talk. So this is a free-flowing discussion for everybody. There is a hand raiser button on the top navigation tool called Reactions. Use that. And if there is anything that you want to add, there's a comment and a Q&A box. I would like to give this to Pranjal, and I hope we all have a great time today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. And good morning and a warm welcome to all of you who are joined online. This discussion on hybrid world has been going on, but we are looking at a slightly more deeper dimension of it, where we are looking at while hybrid work is a reality, the question is about understanding, measuring, and enabling productivity. There are several debates on in the industry about it, and I thought that the CFO board would be a good platform for us to host this discussion. We will have 3 very important speakers, and we will look at what has been done, what is possible, and what are the options ahead of us. So with this, I'd like to request Rekha to begin the presentation and then lead the discussion. Over to you, Rekha. Thank you.
Thank you
Just
so
one more thing. We are recording this session so that we are able to share, insights and document our conversations.
Thank you, Archana. Thanks a ton, Pranjal. First of all, welcome everyone. True to this, the topic of today's discussion, enabling productivity in a hybrid world. I think we wanted this to be an in-person meeting for whoever could join us in Gurgaon. And yesterday, the monsoon finally got to Delhi NCR, and we had to convert this to a truly virtual event and a hybrid event. Some of us here still in Microsoft Office, and a lot of you joining virtually. So that's how that's hybrid for us. I think if we had thought about this maybe 2 years back, it would have been a very different conversation. But today, in today's world, last 2 years, if there's anything that the pandemic has taught us, it has challenged us to be to think in terms of how we can continue to leverage technology and space it doesn't, it's very different from a context perspective and how we can actually build a culture within the organization as well, right? So that's the topic for today, enabling productivity. And what we'll do is, I'll probably spend a couple of minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the max, to walk through, and along with me, I do have Bhaskar, who's going to co-present from Microsoft perspective, and then we'll bring in Joginder and Pritpal to share their perspectives. And I want this conversation to be as participative as possible for all the audience who are joining in today, so that we can all learn from each other, to see what's happening in the outside world. We are hearing a lot of conversations happening around moonlighting, how different organizations are challenging themselves. So let's have a very interactive discussion. Please, as Archana mentioned, you can use the raise hand under reactions, in Teams to put in your comment, to come in whenever you want to have a conversation. With that, we'll get started. Babu, over to next slide, please.
And just to add, Rekha, we'll be happy to answer some of the queries on the chat. So Joginder, Pritpal, and Rekha would be, we can have, in case of lack of time, some of the questions and queries or comments can be addressed during the chat, in the chat itself. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Pranjal. So flexibility today, when we think about it, it's almost three-dimensionals, right? How we are connecting with each other, whether it is physical, whether it's virtual, where we are connecting, and when and where also, right? It's almost like, three-dimensional in terms of location, time when we are connecting, and in terms of, when you think about it, when do people come in, whether they are in person, virtual, and where they are connecting. All of this is also experience in terms of flexibility. And then if you go to the next slide, what we are also seeing is pre-pandemic, when we look at how many people were working, this is global data. I do want to caveat that. We had almost 25% of the workforce working remotely. And during pandemic, it's peak in terms of, 65% of people working from home. And, for depending on what industry they were working in and all, it's very different, right? And then as recent as Q1 of 2022, this is calendar year for us, we are seeing almost 42% of employees continuing to work. And this, like I said, it's varying depending on location, depending on which industry they're falling into. But it also has, its own implications in terms of, what happens with the employee engagement, how the well-being of our employees, and, are they getting burnt out, and, what's their intent or, their own connectedness to the organization. If you see the graph, the table, the graph in the bottom, for people who prefer to be fully on site, there's the thriving or well-being of employees, very high when compared to people who work remotely. And then same thing, when intent to stay is, where they are in terms of, when they are remote versus when what they're preferring to be on site as well, right? And then burnout, probably much less when they are fully on site versus, how they are from when they're working remotely. But there are ways people are making this work, because when you think about it, where as we entered pandemic, the lines between, personal and professional got blurred. And that's where, we also saw a lot of employee burnout. But as we went through, we also learned through those experiences, and how do we block times, to create that space for personal. These are traits that everybody has learned in the last 2 years. Next slide, Babu. And some of the themes that we have seen as we went through Work Trend Index, this was across many organizations in the planet, almost 30,000 plus different employees across the globe. giving feedback, right? And this is something that that was captured through a survey. What we realized was, employees are thinking about, is it really worth, we have seen the impact of great reshuffle happening where employees have changed jobs, some have actually left jobs for good, and they're also thinking about, is it really worth, what's happening around us? And now managers have a real challenge in terms of what the expectations of what leadership has, as well as what are employees expecting out of out of the workplace. And leaders, if they want their employees to come back to work, we have seen challenges in terms of bringing them back. Is my commute to office worth it when I've been very productive in the last 2 years? Why should I show up, right? So that's what employees are questioning, and we are, it's the responsibility of leaders and managers to make that commute worth it. And flexible work, this is also something that you've seen in that today 49% of employees continuing to work from home across the globe. So flexibility here is here to stay. It depends on when, how, and where we are creating. A last one, the theme that has come out is also social capital. In fact, as we went through the pandemic, a lot of us have been banking on some of the social networks that we have built in the previous decade or previous years. In the new world, in the hybrid world, how you build that network, how you build that connectivity of organizations is going to be very different. So that social capital, rebuilding that in the new world is going to be very different. Next slide, please. And this is something that has come out of the groupware quadrants. It's a survey that has come in terms of what does hybrid work matrix look like. It could mean different things, right? One, all of us being in the same time, like today this meeting, but we're actually in different places. So it's synchronous but distributed interaction. We could all be in the same time zone and in the same place, if this meeting had happened all physically in one place, right? But there are also scenarios that are coming where we all be in the same time zone, but in different time, but in different places, watching things differently and all. But I will also share, we just experimented something. We have an annual event at Microsoft where before pandemic, we used to fly in 10,000 people to somewhere in Las Vegas or sometimes in Florida to bring them all together once a year. And over pandemic, what we did was we moved all of that to virtual, and people were attending the meeting virtually. This year, for the first time, we have experimented, something in an asynchronous interaction where we had part of the event physically happening, but part of it is also being delivered virtually in terms of, content that has been created at a different place, but being service to different locations around the same time. So it's a combination that we are also experimenting. We're all learning through this as we go through the hybrid work metrics. Our own journey has been different, how we operated pre-pandemic versus pandemic, and in today's world, in the hybrid world, how we're actually leveraging it, right? So that's something, new ways of learning. And, for us to operate in this new world, we need to think about, our own people, and then, how we are operating from a place perspective, and are we having processes that can help support this experience, and how we create this future bulletproof workplace for us, right? So with that, we have also changed the way we are looking at productivity. In fact, the way we have measured our productivity a few years back, was very different than how we are measuring productivity today. Babu, if you can go to the next slide. So years back, people were measuring activities, but now, in the hybrid world, activities is no longer relevant. It's outcomes. What are we actually achieving from an outcome of a perspective for our own employees, for leaders, managers, and everybody, right? We used to measure work health index. This is how we have got the pulse of the organization. Today, that's no longer relevant in the hybrid work. We need to understand, our employees thriving in today's world. How do we actually think about, employee engagement is very different. Are they able to collaborate in the new world? We have like 30% plus new workforce with, all the new joiners and, even the expansions that we've been doing. How are we measuring the well-being of our employees? And are they feeling connected in the new world? How do you measure social capital? And most importantly, at the end of the day, if you have seen the news lately, everything is all about, are we still able to continue to innovate in this new world, in the new hybrid world? Is it the same as like, what we used to do pre-pandemic, right? Those are, how do you measure all of this from an employee behavior in a perspective? So the indicators that we have been using hybrid versus what we want, if we have to be successful in the hybrid world, it's very different. And the most important thing, are leaders able to engage? Are they able to communicate in the hybrid world? How are they engaging as leaders, managers? How are they feeling connected with their employees? These are certain metrics that we have been, at least within Microsoft, that we have been doing to measure productivity in the hybrid world. I'll just pause here to invite, before I invite Basu to share what we are actually hearing from our customers, some of the market insights, and and also share how we do some of these measurements as well, right? Any questions before we move to Bhaskar?
Rekha, there are a couple of points in the chat. Venkatesh, for example, has asked about what is the India weightage in what you've been talking about. How much is India related and how much is a global insight? So there are some questions and comments in the chat as well.
Yeah, we'll answer this.
I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. Bhaskar, over to you.
Thank you. And am I audible?
Yep.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure for me to be here. My name is Bhaskar Basu, and I lead the Modern Work Business Group at Microsoft India. Now, and frankly, I just pick up from where Venkatesh's question was, and I think the underlying question was that while we're talking about hybrid, how relevant is the overall thematic about hybrid work and its relevance to India and clearly corporate India? And I get the opportunity to talk to many customers, many partners, and frankly, many times I get a sense of cynicism the moment we hear the word hybrid, because the response comes exactly what we see in the papers today. Hybrid is maybe not so relevant because, look, we need to get to office. Think about banks, think about manufacturing entities, think about shop floors. And I think everybody is being encouraged to get back to work. And frankly, when you look at this entire trend, if you look closer and deeper, and these are extracts that I've taken out of Times of India over the just last 30 days. And while the headline reads as return to office, if you look closer and if you read between the lines, it talks about personal interaction, it talks about bonding, it talks about human connection, it talks about experience, and it talks about elevated collaboration. So the fundamentals of, frankly, what we refer to as the new hybrid is not really about just enabling remote conversations. Frankly, of course, we do that very well, and that was a clear learning from the pandemic. But I think the new hybrid that Rekha is referring to quite meaningfully is that it's about ensuring that we are creating immersive engagements and experiences to our employees so that they can do their best work. Let me kind of go a little bit deeper. Babu, if you can take it to the next slide. So specifically, Venkatesh, to your question, these are clearly global trends and insights. Archana has responded saying that almost 60% of weightage comes from India. But I'll go with a disclaimer saying, corporate India gives very different insights based on which part of the world or the industry they're from. I can tell you that people from, as I said, banks would be very different to employees in digital sectors like ITS or unicorns would be very different to government workers, would be very different to, I guess, to each organization as we are kind of representing on the call. But I think there are three very clear learnings. The hybrid work paradigm is giving way to back to office. But as I said, the underlying thematic is about ensuring that we're engaging closely. Now, the question is, why do we really need to engage closely, right? What is this whole big deal about, employee engagement? What really does it make a difference to our lives? And frankly, the underlying thematic is about ensuring that a happy workforce, frankly, drives better bottom line, because a happy workforce will drive better business outcomes. Now, it's quite ironic. Many of you would know that we actually became the 5th largest economy in the world very recently. I'm sure all of you know that we surpassed the UK. But at the same time, you would be surprised to find that in the overall Human Development Index, that's HDI, in an index of 190 countries, we dropped a point further. And the HDI fundamentally looks at level of standard of life, engagement, infrastructure. And think about it, a large part of that in the corporate world is about ensuring that we're able to create a happy workforce. If we're able to engage and drive innovation, if you really have people who are involved and engaged in the workforce. And therefore, in the current world, the whole paradigm of employee well-being and engagement has become very important. Which leads me to my third point that, look, when we talk about the new hybrid and we talk about employee well-being, there are certain fundamentals that each of us as employees look at. And frankly, when we started looking at the pandemic, when all of us started getting into lockdown mode, I think the first set of genuine questions around work-life balance, 18 hours on calls, ensuring that we are checking in employee sentiment, mental health started coming to the fore. And if you could just go to the next slide, Babu. So what we learned, frankly, was, and clearly this is something that corporate India really resonated and told us. They said about if we really want to drive workforce happiness, it needs to be beyond productivity. It needs to be around an essence of ensuring that we are driving and connecting with employees. We are focused on their well-being. We are focused on their growth and development. We understand what is the kind of purpose and goaling they want to have in their entire work environment. Of course, communications is fundamental to it, and hybrid environments allowed for hybrid communications. But a very important imperative also came that knowledge and how we learn in this entire new world as we get back to office, work remotely, engage with people, and drive their experience, the entire notion of knowledge and expertise becomes even more profound. Next slide, please. So what we did at Microsoft, frankly, we are a great tech company. I'm sure all of you would agree with that. But I think we took a step back and we said that before trying to design products, can we really redesign the experience? Can we talk about things which are relevant really to this new hybrid world? Can we really curate experiences for employees that pivots on all these different learnings, right? About well-being, about being happy, about driving work-life balance, about engagement, about communications. And frankly, that's where the entire fundamental design principle of what we refer to Viva is all about. Viva is not really a new product. I would really say it's a new employee experience platform. It's a curation. It's a rendition of existing capabilities that Microsoft already has and fundamentally rendered so that we are able to drive that extra amount of engagement, therefore happiness, and therefore business outcomes in the workplace. I know I'm almost on time, but I just want to leave behind two very important elements of this entire principle. As I said, this entire Viva platform, this is something incidentally we use very meaningfully at Microsoft, and many of our customers and partners in India are starting to really dial up to drive that extra amount of engagement. There are 6 different modules which talk to the different principles I spoke of, but there are a couple of elements which are clearly standing out, one of which is a very important capability that we refer to as insights. Thematically, it focuses on well-being. It focuses on how we're able to really hire people, onboard them faster, drive engagement, ensure that we are helping enable work-life balance. We're able to give patterns of how collaboration is panning out and also driving manager effectiveness. Fundamentally, at the heart of it, what we're saying is that this entire module fundamentally renders experiences as an employee. So when I go in, I can think about what I can do to make myself feel better, disconnect from my work environment, engage with my colleagues, even listen to music and find focus time. Just stay on the previous slide, please. It's about ensuring that I'm talking as a manager, I'm able to figure out how effective I am in terms of engaging with my team and going beyond. And as an organization, how the entire collaboration patterns of remote, hybrid, and on-person work is kind of panning out. So as an employee, as a manager, and as a leader in the organization, I clearly have elements to figure out this new work pattern. Moving on, there's a second very important capability that we refer to as, Babu, if you could just go to the next slide, which is what we refer to as Viva engagement. Again, a learning for us is that employee engagement experience is even more heightened in the current world. Using this capability, we're able to drive a very immersive and engaging experience with all employees. And fundamentally, think about it, it's like Yammer in the workspace. Many people refer to it as a Facebook for the enterprise, but fundamentally, it's those social connections in the workplace that we're driving on top of the team's platforms, which allows for far more immersive collaboration, communication, and ultimately outcomes. So I'll just pause here. There's so much more that we can talk about, but I just wanted to leave you with the thought extending to what Rekha was already talking about. The new world, the new hybrid world is evolving rapidly. We are listening very closely to what is happening in India. We are tailoring experiences so that we are able to drive that level of balance between work, engagement, and of course, life, and therefore drive better outcomes at the workplace. Let me pause here and hand it back to you, please.
Thank you, Basu. Any questions before we go into the panel conversation today?
I think we're good, Rekha. So I think I'll just introduce Jogendra Singh, who is the CFO at Hero Corporate Services, and Pritpal Kular, CHRO at Indus Towers. So we have actually two key pillars of enterprise represented here. So over to you, back to you, Rekha.
Thank you so much. I see Jatin also join us, Pranjal. So Jatin, will be good to hear your perspective as well on this very important topic.
Several of our board members are online, Rekha.
Yeah.
Babu,
Awesome.
perhaps we can stop sharing and get back to video, I guess.
Yeah. Jogendra, I do want to get your perspective in terms of how do you think about hybrid in perspective of the industry in which you are operating? Is hybrid here to stay?
You're mute, Jogendra.
You need to unmute. Right. So thank you, Rekha, and thank you, CFO Board. So now the question is hybrid here to stay? So let's step back and try and see that once in a generation, this kind of a shift takes place. We have the opportunity to reimagine how do we work. So if you go back to 1800s, the Industrial Revolution, moved many in the Europe and United States, from fields to factories. In 40s, after World War II, when there were not too many men available, a lot of women came into the workforce and at a very unprecedented rates. In 1990s, when the PCs and email and the digital, in a way, a very early signs of digital, came into the place, then there was an unprecedented increase in productivity from whatever it used to be, and the speed of decision making, etc. So we ushered into the new digital area. Similarly, in 2020s, in 2020, after the COVID-19, the pandemic drove employees out of offices to work from home, and this has presented to us another such opportunity. Now, returning to workplace would be chance to create a new, more effective operating model that companies and people, are navigating in a world of increasing uncertainty, or all what we talk about VUCA world. And this is the time now we have started thinking of how to really redesign the work. The way, we have just seen the presentation and talked about how we can rethink of, working. If you really look at people and talent are at the core of the transformation of, whatever work we are doing in whatever industry, we are. As far as Hero Enterprise is concerned, we are in different kind of industries. We are in very manufacturing kind of industries. So what would be the impact, or what has been the impact in those industries would be starkly different from what is happening in other, companies which are in insurance, broking, etc., which are more tech based and can go to these tech platforms. So if I really talk about a steel manufacturing company that we have in Ludhiana, we opened on 8th of May 2020, and from that day we were not closed even for a single day, and the entire 100% workforce was coming to the factory. And we were very fortunate that during wave 1, there was not even a single incident of somebody even falling sick. So which was, of course, because of a lot of precautions that we were taking, etc. However, in the other parts of the organizations, they were, like everybody else, we looked at how we can, at that point in time, survive, and then, of course, keep working. So this has given us that opportunity. So what is actually happening, now, if I just, come back to the current context, so many of us are very keen to establish, some kind of normalcy very quickly. And we talked about, coming back to office. However, I think, we are trying to look at it from a very simple logistical, point of view. And sometimes we do it just to give us a sense of control, so to say. So the question that we talk about typically focus on the number of days that the employees will come to office, what kind of collaboration tools, we will use, what kind of policies on pay levels, and norms for meeting behaviors, etc., etc. And we talked about question of is it worth it? That's the question which was there in Rekha's presentation also. So when we talk about worth it question, then we are talking about what exactly is the purpose. So we look at outcome, or we look at output. From moving from output to outcome. The effectiveness, question. So therefore, in the enthusiasm about the return from remote working that we are talking about, business leaders, all of us run the risk of actually increasing the disconnect between the leaders and the people. So we have to tread on this very, very, carefully in that sense. So in my view, primarily, there are some essentials in my view. First of all, the leaders will have to be very flexible and embrace the hybrid work. So there is no going back in that sense. We'll have to really need to reconsider redesigning our physical spaces. These will be, like hybrid environment, like hot desks or meeting, pods, etc. I was also, looking at one of the chat from Puneet Sahni where he talked about, meeting, on coffee machines, etc., on coffee pod, etc., or water cooler, talks, which also, in a way, if you really look at it, gives, a lot of innovation to the entity. There are a lot of serendipitous, kind of movements out of these coffee, machine talks or water cooler, chats, which gives us a lot of, solutions or, innovations. I absolutely, and the kind of connect that we get, out of this is also truly, truly wonderful. So that's, one, that we have to be flexible and embrace hybrid work. Second, what is very important is that productivity has to be redefined. And more importantly, measured, more accurately, probably. We talked about, productivity in the sense of, output versus outcome is one. Also in the sense of, looking at the higher purpose, looking at well-being of people. So we'll have to really expand this definition of productivity and truly look at the effectiveness, model. And third, I think what is important in my view is to really embrace what I call the inclusive culture so that employees feel supported. We have seen that relationships have suffered during the pandemic, and how do we create an atmosphere that can be restored. So therefore, a fine balance, between physical, remote and hybrid will need to be created. And hybrid, in my view, will have to be the default working model, going forward. That's my view on whether hybrid is going to stay there.
Thank you so much, Jogender. It's great to see hear your perspective, particularly coming from a manufacturing industry, how you're using different slivers for where your own employees, folks who are working in factories, versus and administrative offices, right? Preetpal, now over to you. I know we have a lot of finance audience in the on the call. Coming from being a HR leader. How are you looking at this one, and what do you think we can do to create that consistent employee experience to retain talent? Because what we have seen in the great reshuffle is, and we ourselves have experienced even in India, the amount of change that has happened, and talent has always been, the good talent is always in shortage. How do you think, either tech or what we can do to create that consistent employee experience?
Great. Thanks, Rekha. Just by way of introduction, my name is Preetpal and I head HR for Indus Towers. Just to give you a little bit of context on the company, we run all the towers in the country, almost about 2 lakh of them, on which all the signals of your telecom services bounce off. So if we go down for even a minute, data transfers suffer. So therefore, in fact, I was thinking what Jogender was talking about a factory, and I'm thinking about saying my guys run about 180 lakh, 1.8 lakh factories. Literally, that's the kind of situation. Because also just to kind of prospect this further, the Ministry of Telecom expects each telecom tower to be up at a 99.98%. That means, be it in Delhi, that's fine. You can have it going. But just imagine, the outlands, the backlands of the country, you're expected to deliver that. That's not going to happen all the time by remote. That's what everybody would say, right? And that's what the immediate response would be. And that's how we were functioning for the last 10 years. And we talk about consistency and kind of doing everything the same way that we've been doing. And therefore building up the talent within the organization in that space. Now, cut that piece for the last about 10 years, come COVID, a new way of thinking comes in. Today, we are talking about all the towers being self-sufficient to a very large extent. Earlier, we would expect a technician to go to a tower on a regular basis. Today, we do it by, kind of a web access to the location over there. Multiple things being tried out, things that were not even attempted earlier. But you talked about consistency, and I'm a little kind of unsure about the word consistency in the situation of a great reshuffle. And I'm thinking more of it coming from a customized experience for individuals. Now, yes, it's been a drastic shift. Yes, the people have started looking at work and life very differently in this space. But, the hybrid work environment, and I'm extremely bullish about it for the simple reason that today, by virtue of offering a very dispersed way of working, I can get a larger talent pool into the organization. Earlier it was a mandatory thing. Yes, a lot of people will still miss the coffee corners discussions. And I was on the chat talking to Smita about how we used to have coffee chats in GSK back then. But then, the reality is that to some, their personal life situations do not allow for a certain environment, and hence it's a great opportunity to rope them in. Great scenario from that perspective. Now, building a consistent employee experience. Again, I'm going to challenge the word consistent, but I'm going to put it back and say, hey, can it be a customized experience? Because what motivates me might not motivate the next person sitting right next to me in the office. But can I get the same experience to people? I'll narrate one very interesting episode which happened during the lockdown, first lockdown. I picked up the phone and called up one of the guys and said, "Hey, can you deliver, healthy food packs to the leadership team?" And we got all of this kind of done, some small boxes from one of the companies which is a startup in Delhi, and got them to deliver at everybody's place. Now, as I was doing that, it was a very consistent experience. My friend here, he's on the call, Hemant, would remember this. I got a response back from somebody saying, "Hey, I don't eat mushrooms." And that's the time I realized that I was looking at providing a consistent experience, building a good employee experience piece around their engagement and all that stuff. But I did not, I actually undermined the thought process that it has to get customized. Now, in a normal work environment, that would have been the easiest thing because everybody was in office. You can say, "Hey, I don't take this and I'm fine with this." Today, as leaders, we'll have to become that much more sensitive. Can I be that much more careful when I'm having a conversation? So an agile individual to an agile work environment, investment in people becomes extremely large. As leaders, we need to be even more authentic and caring from that perspective, because caring can have different connotations for different people. To some, it could be nosy, and to some, it could be just not there. So as leaders, we'll have to be able to think through the entire spectrum and say, "Hey, am I doing horses for courses in this regard?" And therefore, it's more important that we move from a consistent to a customized experience for our talent pool. Now, that switches gears to, and how are we going to attract people? Now, what do we do as a sales pitch, if I may call it, when I'm reaching out to the fresh talent and telling them what? Because now it becomes very fuzzy. I'm talking two different things to two different people because I'm wanting to engage with each one of them. The employee experience is coming up very good, but it's being rooted through different pieces. Therefore, the pieces that worked as employee engagement activities in the past will need to be tailored and tempered to a future-looking piece as well. And there is a huge amount of piece that, from an HR standpoint, I would say it sits within every person's remit who is a people manager. And I think, it's no longer the HR function which has to do all of this. I think, each one of you guys on this call are more people managers than, at least I can say about me. You guys do much more people management than I do today. And I think that's what is kind of going to be the big deal going forward. A great reshuffle or no reshuffle, but I think moving towards customization for everything is the more story to be dealt with going forward. That would be my view, Rekha.
No, excellent. I think it's fantastic to get this perspective, Pripal. No, very, very good perspective in terms of how we can create that customized experience for employees. Jogender, shifting gears, how do we ensure employees and leaders, they are all empowered with the right set of data and insights to be more productive and to be more agile in this hybrid world? Any learnings for you to share on this aspect?
Yeah, I think, Pripal really put it up very, very beautifully. And primarily these are, so how do you make sure that your people are empowered, people are cared for? That's the whole thing about, and while I was just, listening to Pripal, somebody said very beautiful. It said EQ is more important than IQ, So today, how do you really think about people And if you think about people, people think about you and make you successful. It's absolutely, you know, it's not tech, it's not, you know, business models, but the people who turn all the business models or tech or everything into success, in my view. So what, you know, we had said the remote work, you know, in a way virtually eliminates spontaneous learning. And this is what we were talking about, you know, a talk about coffee shop, etc. And creativity, you know, to that extent takes a back seat because you don't run into machine, you know, people in the coffee machines, talk with the clients. So if you talk about, you know, meeting with the clients or meeting with your customers, you know, now I can, in terms of productivity, I can meet a lot more customers than I could meet physically because I don't have to travel. But if you talk about connection, if you talk about, you know, talking to clients in you know, some kind of unplanned scenarios or sitting face to face and really picking up those clues of, you know, what he's thinking about, what he's talking about, how does he sound, you know, so all those kind of things are different in remote world versus a physical world in that sense. So if I really talk about, you know, talking about better decision making in the hybrid world, there are a couple of things which I think are very, very important from that point of view. So one is, of course, and it tops is the experience, whether it is employee experience or customer experience. You know, today we also talk about not ROI, but ROE, you know, not return on investment, but return on experience. And this is true for not only for customers, but as well as for the employees. So absolutely, their experience and customization is something which would really be very, very important. And that is where, you know, the connect will start taking place. And, you know, again, we talk about, you know, tech, and we talk about, you know, the data and how do you harness that data and insights, you know, would also be very crucial. Second thing which I feel important is empowerment. You know, when you have to make sure that the people are empowered. So you have to have a shared purpose and motivate employees to do what is needed for success for whatever areas, you know, that we're doing. So this was very, very important. And there were multiple, you know, examples that we had during, you know, the pandemic period where there was a huge need for keeping connect and huge need for empowering people, because you're not sitting right in front of them. You can't, you know, give directions on day in and day out, and you empowered them. OK, fine enough. You go ahead and, you know, take place. And I think this for us, this truly worked. What is also very important is during this empowerment piece is that you have to be very clear about the roles of the people, especially when it comes to hybrid world. So what is it? Which roles can be performed remotely and which roles that have to be on site? So this will also, you know, set some expectations in place and, you know, position people for success. So that's the second part. The third thing I think very important is that you enable them. So that enablement is absolutely necessary. I think we all of us have given all sort of tools to you know, employees, whether it is Zoom, Teams, Slack, or and a lot of other you know, productivity tools that we are talking about. So how do you really give, you know, you have that opportunity to think about hybrid workplace in a very proactive manner rather than a reactive manner, and you address questions apart from enablement and giving these tools, the other questions of, you know, security or data security, or which tool selection is important, what exactly are you measuring, you know, for what purpose are you measuring, whether it is an output or outcome, you know, always say, because it's very important, you know, for you to have foresight than a hindsight, you know. So the proper enablement, giving them tools and giving it for what purpose. And next, I think is very important is excellence. We always talk about within our companies that this is very, very important principle in my view, whether you are using which technology, analytics, collaboration platform, automation. So how do you maximize efficiency to deliver a positive experience, regardless of where people work? This sense of excellence in people, if you give, I think you are definitely bound to get better results. And last thing, I think in my view, what is very important is what we call environment. We always talk about culture eats strategy for breakfast. So maintaining culture is absolutely a concern today, especially when we were working remote. So in a hybrid world, you'll have to really define how do you remain connected, how people remain connected with your vision, with your mission, with your purpose, especially when they are working remotely. So how will you preserve and perpetuate, that the most important part, which in my view is the culture. And if you really put together all of these, I think that is the recipe primarily in my view to, to enable them to take faster and better decisions in the hybrid world.
Wonderful, Joginder. Before we go further, I think Archana has a poll so that all of us can give inputs, and then I would also want to invite, while she gets that poll out, we'll see if Jatin, if you would like to share something. Sugata, I know you're on the call. Venkatesh, Hemant, any of you would want to share some perspectives here.
Yeah, I can
I've
go first.
initiated the poll. Audience, we have a huge audience joined us. Please make use of this. Go ahead. Thank you.
Venkatesh, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I am, or the companies I have been in is on one end of the spectrum in this whole debate, actually. So the companies, I mean, my current company and my previous company, we are in the category of guys like banks, etc. We've been in logistics, so we've been working from office throughout. So I manage supply chain also. So it was a bit, it would have been a little bit disingenuous to have my whole team working on ground and not have even showing my face there. So I come on that spectrum of having been working throughout the pandemic, in fact, physically. So it's a different mindset in our organizations. But what is happening is that the pandemic with the work from home culture gave us an opportunity to be flexible with schedules. So we no longer needed to have everybody physically present, etc. We could continue meetings. I think it was also referred to earlier that in terms of customer calls, etc., it was much more. So for example, even in an IPO process, when we were discussing with meetings, they were very much smoother. We put together, we could get much more done in a concentrated time compared to what was in one earlier organization where everything was physical. So all that was done. What we are doing now is enforcing. I mean, we've always been enforcing physical work for all the other reasons which were mentioned, but we realize that the flexibility offered has been quite beneficial to us. So we are increasing our investment on digital tools, etc., so that the productivity can continue. The only negative which we are seeing, and which is also the part of the poll question, is that even with physical work which is going on and all this discussion about moving back to physical, unfortunately, the work hours have got significantly extended because of the tools. So that is something which we may want to keep in mind. And okay, I'm in a startup and anyway working hours are extended, but the digital overload is actually, I mean, it's quite overbearing for many people. So just my thoughts.
No, that's very important point. It's there is a lot of digital overload, and it's across, right? It's across. Very good point, Venkatesh. Nitin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rekha. So this has been a very interesting conversation, and I just thought there were a couple of observations that I had on some of the points that were made. So, just to give a perspective, we're about 20 odd thousand people in India, and a pretty diverse talent pool as well, right? So, from accountants to technology guys to, various. So it's a pretty diverse pool and a different kind of work, right? And a lot of work gets done which is internal facing, and a lot of work is client facing, right? So there are different challenges that come in terms of how do you manage this flexibility, because the flexibility also depends on the clients we work with, right? Some of them like to have a physical interaction, some of them prefer to have a digital interaction. So sometimes organizationally we may not have the flexibility or the entire flexibility that one is looking for. Two things really which has happened. One is that it's very clear for us that we don't have a one-size-fit-all solution even within the organization. So the flexibility that one was talking about is we've actually gone about looking at different teams and trying to understand what is their level of flexibility or what is their hybrid model. So we have sort of hybrid models within hybrid model, depending on who needs to do what. So it's that level of flexibility and acceptance then one had to sort of go with. Of course, how do you maintain some level of consistency within this flexibility is the challenge. The second interesting point I think that's come about is that, the level of flexibility or hybrid model that people are looking for is also becoming a bit location specific. Okay. So if I look at let's say people coming to office, and we're not forcing anyone to come to office, we're just saying office is open, you're encouraged to come, interact, etc. Right? And that's the sort of name of the game, right? That, we are very open, we're very inclusive and all of that. Now, what we're finding is that if you take a place like Bangalore, okay, the attendance in office is 5%. You take a place like Gurgaon, it's almost 25-30%. No change in policy, no different communication, but it's a different this thing. So, and I was just wondering in this whole thing, so, you may have an organizational philosophy or approach, but, there is this unknown, uncontrollable traffic factor which is coming in, and, you may define flexibility very differently if you're sitting in Bangalore versus sitting in Gurgaon. And I was wondering that, of course, for organizations like Microsoft, it may be a phenomena which, you're experiencing from a global perspective as well, right? So while you may have a certain approach and philosophy around this, but how do you kind of, factor in these uncontrollables? And I thought that when I look at Bangalore, I think it comes also with a little more of a tech mindset, okay? Where the flexibility of not going to office is far greater inherently versus when you look at a similar profile of a person sitting in Bangalore, in Gurgaon or Mumbai. So I just wanted to share this perspective because it kind of adds to a level of complexity when you're trying to respond to this.
No, I think it's a beautiful perspective. Then I think it depends on place. That's what the three flexibilities, right? Place, time, and when, where, and how all of those come in. Fantastic. Sugata, over to you, and Jatin, I would want to hear from you after Sugata, please.
Yeah, thank you, Rekha. The comment is one of the early charts that you were showing, and I picked up something there. The burnout rate seems to be the lowest, not in the hybrid scenario, but in the fully in office scenario, unless I missed something there. Now, see, we all agree that there's overwhelming indication that hybrid is the way to go. So the question is, how do you get the burnout rate lowest in a hybrid kind of scenario? And one of the ways is obviously to enable through digital tools. And what we saw also that, we had very good sales collaterals even before the pandemic. Sales teams could actually give a virtual tour of the factory to customers. They could do a virtual inspection, etc. But those tools were hardly being used. But after the pandemic, with retraining, they started using them. They felt more enabled. Now, with the advancement of that in the last 2.5 years, we are now going towards a digital overload kind of situation, which was being talked about. So possibly this should also trigger changes in the structure of the organization, and also moving towards an organization where it's made up of small microcosms or small self-governing teams which are distributed and decentralized rather than our traditional structures. Now, traditional structures are changing, no doubt. I mean, organizations have become much flatter, but there are certain organizations globally you would know who have made it, taken it to an absolutely different stage where it's totally decentralized. Small teams govern themselves, they interact with the rest of the organization. So possibly this is, this should make us think about going towards that kind of a structure. And then that with everything that we have digital, you talked about customization, makes the whole thing workable,
No, fantastic, Sugata. Pranjal, I see your hand raised, and
Yeah,
before you, yeah.
Perhaps Jatin can come in. Jatin?
Yeah,
sure. No, thank you.
We won't ask you to defend Bangalore.
Bangalore is beyond defense. I think. Yeah. In fact, but I must share with you because I think there have been such horror videos and memes which have been floating around on WhatsApp and where not. So its situation wasn't that bad. I mean, I've been defending, although I told you I won't defend, but situation wasn't that bad. I mean, a lot of people call me to say, are you underwater or you are above water? And I wasn't underwater at any point in time. Look, my experience, I mean, it's been a huge learning listening to all the perspectives on this call. So deeply appreciate it. And it is very valuable for me at this point because we are at a point of a little bit of inflection. You can say we are the only industry which has been far more pampered, if that is the word, than any other industry, which we have still continued to work largely from home. Our total population in the rooms in the office is not more than 9 to 12% on any day. So we are still 85 to 90% working from home. It is true for all industry players. So it's not just that it's just a problem of one player. And we are as such on a 25% attrition, give and take 20 to 25%. So one is very worried that when we seek that people must come back to office, what would happen to attrition? And because of that sense of risk, we have not taken active steps to bring people back. But we are at a point where now it's a point of inflection. We don't really we can't say that we can all take vacations wherever we want, but we can't come to office. So that we are well past that phase. So I think it is going to be very critical time period for us for next 6 months as we bring back our employees. Of course, all of us have started working all days in office. So senior management is back, but it's really the interiors of the country where our employees are based is going to be very tough. There are certain other challenges which some of you may not have felt or seen as acutely, which is seen by IT services, is that for whatever reason the rentals have shot up in large cities, which means employees are saying, I'll come back if you increase my salary, and that doesn't sound very exciting certainly for the company. So, but then there are SEZ regulations, and all of you have seen those circulars. So I'll say many of you are on the other side of the race, and we are just starting our race. So in 6 months, we'll know how well we do on this. My only point I mean, little bit, which I feel very passionately for is, we have been able to attract great talent from the parts of the country which we have never been able to attract, and very genuinely, I mean it. A young girl from the interiors, not even city, a town of Punjab, a girl from, Manipur. These girls will never travel to Bangalore, Chennai. I mean, whether we really like it or not, we live in an ecosystem. We lose that talent if we completely become very hard. So we'll have to work through, but at the same time, we can never give a career to an individual who's going to always stay in that city for rest of his or her life. So it's a balance that we'll have to drive towards. I'll say no more, but that's where we are. Our race begins now. Yeah.
No, Jatin, I think, beautiful perspective. In fact, we have been going through our own learning, right? March is when we said, we're in stage 6. Stage 6 is when we actually said, everybody welcome to offices. We were at around 10% something. Today, I think, depending on which org you talk, somewhere around 25 to 35%, right? In sales and marketing, we have a lot more people coming up. Engineering, where they are still in the 15-20%. Some people are coming 3 days, more than 3 days. Some are coming a day or two, but it's a slow transition. So happy to share like our own learnings as we went through this process, Jatin. Pranjal,
Thank you, Rekha. I'll reach out.
Yeah, Pranjal, over to you. Maybe we can, I know we're almost on time. I want to be mindful of everybody's time.
No, we have time till 1 p.m. So, Rekha, this question is actually for Preetpal because he represents, he's the HR leader, but I think there's an impact on CFOs too. So my question is that it's related to the water cooler and the culture reference. So is there now going to be more effort? So when you have people in the office, culture is a natural it develops naturally. Naturally in the sense because people are together, of course, you need to have some policies. But when people are not meeting very often, do you now need to put more effort in bringing them together occasionally through offsites, through more L&D programs, through bonding sessions at every level? Because 6 months of separation or 2 years of separation also, does not lead to good communication or collaboration, which therefore also has a cost and effort involved in this. So do we see now with the acceptance of hybrid forever in different levels, do we see this effort coming through in corporate India across sectors?
Great point, Pranjal. I think, a couple of things that resonate very well and lots of stuff that you're saying. Lots of people are already beginning to do these in different sizes and shapes and scale, if I may call it. Now, a couple of things that happened while I was hearing Jatin as well as Sugata. Jatin talking about getting onto the journey of and the expectation that as we start calling people in, there will be higher attrition. Sugata talking about structures need to switch with roles getting recrafted. All of that is bound to happen. Now, coming to how do you engage and how do we feel about the whole thing? We live with a fallacy that as leaders, we are responsible and we can be trusted. And the guy down below needs to be supervised all the time. Jatin mentioned about somebody in Manipur and somebody in a small town, and that they can be taken on board now and might not be. The point is, might not be available to come to Bangalore and work, but we don't know what will be the change in the next 1 year in the individual's life. 2 years down the line, world would change. So therefore, to shoot down quality talent is not a great idea for that reason. Now, what do we all need to do as leaders, which I'm sure at every level needs to be done. First is about trust and care. If we think that we as an organization can be trusted by our teams, I think that needs to percolate down the line as well. Are we willing to trust and care for our people? Are we going to make changes for them that suit those individual needs? And last but not the least, where is the family in all of this? COVID came in, till that time, we could very conveniently say, I'm still saying conveniently say that there's an individual, there's a professional who comes to work, disassociate the family from them. You're at work, you come, work and go back, and we will do the engagement piece in the office. So the L&D piece, if you call it engagement, I consider L&D as development. But all the engagement, build up that you want to do, it's now not looking at the person, it's now looking at the family. And therefore, the cultural indices that Joginder was earlier referring about, my sense is that we need to bring in the family now. How many of us know, every member of the family of our team members? How often do we speak about them? And if you look back in your times as the career was growing, which leader would you naturally gravitate towards? The person who talked to you just about work, your development and stuff, or somebody who was also mindful of a sensitive piece about, oh, you got to take care of a little one at home. No worries, go ahead. We'll handle stuff later. I think those are pieces that we will need to kind of bring into our ways of working. That's the only way we will be able to kind of hold the attrition. And to the point Jatin was making about fear of attrition increasing, I think take it or leave it, it will still hit you. As an organization at Indus, for a long period of time, we were at an attrition which was in single digits. Post-COVID, we've been hitting plus of 20% on an ongoing basis, but that does not take away the efforts that we need to make, because this will lead dividends somewhere else as well. So trust and care, organization of the future, bringing in families. Also, how do we structure the roles? How do we differentiate the thinking and the doing roles, which can be kind of, permanently work from home from a perspective of, people who would need that flexibility versus somebody who wants to come and necessarily be at the coffee corner every day in the morning. That's also an option that we'll need to build. So it's going to be, again, a very open situation for all of us, is my sense.
But people will companies budget for more gatherings, meetings, offsites, L&D? I mean, that's a cost, right? And there's an effort, because bringing people together is going to be an effort.
It's so interesting. Just today morning before this call, I was having a discussion with my business manager, and we were looking at data points to say pre-COVID, how much was team dinners and team lunches costing as a ballpark, and what has it been during COVID, and what do we want to do going forward? Again, one of our biggest mistakes, we try to put limits around each one of these and say, hey, you're a senior manager, this is your limit. You're a director, this is your limit. And this youngster turns around to me and says, boss, why can't we have just a specific saying, be mindful of the spend and go ahead and do it, and let's see what happens. I think somewhere that needs to come in. Will that lead to an extreme high cost? I am dead certain no, but my finance colleagues will never allow me to do that. They will always want an AOP number, and it will be such a difficult thing for me to explain an ROI on that. So I'm
glad you're saying this to a bunch of CFOs.
I know. I see some of them smiling, but they'll all be hating me when the AOP doesn't come from me.
No, Pritpal, I can definitely tell you, from CFO's perspective that, CFOs today are looking at, this number very, very, with very flexible, perspective. And especially, when you talk about trust, I think we have always seen that, when you have trusted, people, especially youngsters, I would talk about, they have actually delivered more than that. I wanted to also, Pranjal, make a point on the family, care that Pritpal, talked about, and especially in the context of Hero, group, as I say, we have always been from the very beginning, from many years, and I can say that with authority because I have been with Hero for a very long time, and I've seen some other side of it also, that we have been very, very careful in nurturing the families of not only employees, but also even dealers. in that sense. So I can tell you, Mr. Om Prakash Munjal, who was looking after Hero Cycle, and I have had a lot of experience with him. He could rattle the names of their dealers, their sons, their grandsons, etc., etc. And he would always talk to them, not like what is your son doing. He would take the name and then what is he doing now, and that connect. I have also seen has brought in some sense of loyalty, if I can call it. And I've seen many of them at this promoter level participating in employees either marriages or other functions or whatever whenever, and I've seen them at multiple occasions. So that family connect is always really something that goes in a very fundamental way in creating trust and creating loyalty towards that. So that's the point I just wanted to make.
I think we have few more board members. I want to get their perspective as well. Anil, Parashar, Rajiv, Hemant. Anything you would like to add?
So I think, Rekha, Hemant, I think what is important is, unfortunately, they can't be, what I'm seeing at least, and this is my perspective, that a particular hybrid policy, which is a one size fits all across the organization, is not going to work. What is definitely going to work is horses for courses, wherein it becomes need based. It becomes what is convenient to that person, not necessarily only that location, but sometimes it has to be also person specific. So for instance, people who are running factories or the daily workers, they have to be there, 24/7 in an operation like ours, or somewhere else it could be at a particular time frame, but always to office. And then in certain areas where office is close to someone's home, they are very happy coming to office, like in Bangalore or in Mumbai, if the commute ain't too much. On the contrary, there are people who would say, okay, I live very far off, and we have an office there, even though your place of work is, let's say, in Nariman Point, you're staying in the area, and if I have an office in the area, I go every day. And then there would be some people who would say, look, I'm okay to come to office, but can I do it 3 times a week rather than 5 days a week? So all I'm trying to say is it's kind of going, it's horses for courses, and you'll have to be, flexible, not without, damaging the culture. We have to be individual specific and work accordingly to the individual needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemant. Anil, would you want to come in here?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, amazing discussion, great talk, and got many perspectives. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The only, and pretty much everything to my mind has been covered. The only aspect which I wanted to kind of bounce off everybody is the way the new world is shaping up. Is it that the employer has become kind of scared of the employee? Because the employee suddenly started pushing that needle to the extent of saying that I have to take care of my grandfather, I have to take care of my children, how do they go to school? All this was happening earlier also. Now employers are sitting, and we have Mr. Pritpal here, Mr. Jogendra here, all the top guns are here. Are we now beginning to only manage their needs and their requirements in the in the word called culture, in the word called development, balance, work-life balance, and whatever. So that is something which I find, quite fascinating in the new post-pandemic world, that I have myself seen mails coming from my colleagues saying that, who will take care of dropping my children if I come to work? And I'm saying, excuse me, something is going wrong. Either I am really outdated, which I am, and I admit, or there is something amiss in this whole thing. Thank you.
Very,
Hi,
very
Rekha.
good.
Yeah, Rajiv this side. I hope I'm
Rajiv,
audible.
hi.
Yeah, hi. Hi. No, I think awesome. And obviously, Anil Bhai has an important perspective, but I think each one of the speakers, including your presentation, definitely is thought-provoking. I would just like to add a couple of, key perspectives basis what I'm seeing as a part of the startup ecology across the globe. This has really enabled, a lot of startup leaders, especially founders, to save on, economize on the cost, but it is also so much dependent on the business model. See, mankind as such needs to connect physically, emotionally, relate with each other. Only then cultures are built over a longer term. But today's youngsters are happy working in silos. A lot of them, because of so much screen time, so much engagement over the connectivity media, are also interested that they should be given that flexibility. But it depends again on the work. It again depends on the piece where if you have to come together, you've got to make time to meet up. And if you can't, I'm sorry, that role is not for you. That kind of a flexibility is coming in, that kind of approach is coming in, that kind of economization is coming in. And we all need to be accepting this hybrid frame of work, as also be respectful for certain roles, which may require a very different set. And why I say this is, see, we all know sales folks love to meet, engage, and collaborate in person, and then go about whether meeting up with the customers in person or engaging over lunches, dinners, etc., to able to strike deals. But at the same time, it is important to be flexible to them. And why I say this is, and this is a very long ago, my personal conversation with one of my, obviously mentors and seniors I've learned with Michael Dell himself. He used to say that, guys, maybe our sales guys, he may be a vice president or he may be a president. And if he has to work in silos, he doesn't want to be a manager, so be it. Because he's giving me billions of dollars worth of sales, he's able to operate in his own approach, own home, own framework. You need not push him to be a manager. He may be the best guy in the world who may be earning more than me. And that is what is important. That kind of a comprehension and respect, I think, for each role specific. And that's where the leadership, obviously HR and the other leaders would need to build in approaches to assess each individual, each candidate, whether through various tests, etc., have to become more prominent, have to really assess before we get in somebody on board. Because once we have got somebody on board, it's equally important for us as much as the candidate to be able to make a success, because it doesn't really help in doing a churn, doing getting in and then maybe phasing them out if they're not fitting in. I think it doesn't suit anybody. So I think the hybrid piece is the reality of today, and for the world of tomorrow, digital world is the way things are going to move. A lot of enablers have come in. Youngsters don't want to be in the office all the time. They have a different approach. Seniors definitely would wish to have, but they need to be open so their knowledge, wisdom can enable. But the world is definitely a hybrid world. There is no doubt, and there is no going back. Today it is, or yesterday it was COVID. Tomorrow it could be anything else. I think the flexibility, the collaborative mindset, the openness, the ability to assess each other in a better way, that what fits in. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole. I think all these are aspects which we need to further get our hand around, and maybe enable each other to become more successful, whatever it may be. And I think that's what I look at it after hearing each one of the wonderful, people who have spoken, and I would say that let's be practical, let's be ready for it, and let's enable a part of this ecology. Thank
awesome, Rajiv. A fantastic perspective there. I know where anyone else, Narasimha, would you want to come in here? I'm just checking if there's anyone else we want to hear from.
Rajesh, would you like to say something?
Yeah, hi, sorry, Pranjal.
Hi, Rajesh.
Yeah, hi, Rekha. So I think almost everything is covered. Just a few thoughts. The benefit of a hybrid or benefit of people coming to office. So just some experience while I was sitting for this meeting. I'm working out of my office. So since this meeting is virtual, few people were able to just barge in and travel because they know that meeting is going on virtual, and they can take liberty and they can basically get their work done. So that's some of the disadvantages of being virtual. I could open Amazon and see if they have started some sale on iPhone 14, or still iPhone 14 is not on the sale. So that is another disadvantages of being virtual. But at the same point of time, if it is virtual or let's say remote working, then if I need to go to pick up my kid from school because today his bus is not there because of some extracurricular activity, so that's convenience. So I think it's a mix and match of everything. Both have their own benefits. So we need to see what is the harmony and what is the right balance for the each organization, for the each department. So like whatever was mentioned in a couple of comments, we need to see for locations perspective, from department perspective, what is right, and we need to go with that decision. Whether it should be 3+2, whether it should be 4+1, or even for a manufacturing organization like us, some of the people have to be always in the office. So basically a harmony has to be arrived so that it's a win-win situation for organization as well as employee. And we don't feel that okay, employees are threatening us, or we don't feel that okay, employer is threatening us. And it's a good harmony between all the people in this society. Thanks.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you. No, it's wonderful to hear the diverse opinions and perspectives on this very important topic. And Pritpal, I think it's fantastic to get a CHRO in the conversation to keep us all sane and give us the reality from a people perspective, culture, and how we almost think about the customization, right? But at the same time, like I think Jatin has also brought up super important points in terms of are we actually missing out on talent, the talent from different perspective. And when we as a country are on this growth stage, how do we ensure like we're empowering everybody from every town out there so that we are contributing to the growth of the economy as well. So lots of learnings for me as I hear from each one of you. And as leaders, we all have a very big role to play. But at the same time, hybrid also. Venkatesh, you mentioned about the digital overload, and Sugata in terms of how we need to create those structures in place. So fantastic to hear these perspectives. Pranjal, anything you want to add before we wrap the conversation?
No, thank you, Rekha. I want to thank you and the entire team of Microsoft, which has supported us in this, the CFO board for pulling this off. So really appreciate the effort, and to Jogendra, Pritpal, and all our board members for joining us in educative, engaging, and in some way entertaining discussion. So I wish you all the best, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. And Pritpal, we hope to see you in person also very soon. And any thoughts you have on what the CFO board can do, we'll be delighted to discuss. I think this is the evolving piece, and every few weeks and months, new ideas and innovations are coming up. So from all of you, including our board members, any thoughts and ideas would be most welcome. So with this, I'd like to thank all of you and close the session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Pranjal. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.